Okay, folks, I'm going to do a quick little bit about getting your data out of ServiceNow instances and moving them over into a different instance of ServiceNow. For this particular group, mostly instructors, I'm going to focus on three things: update sets, add to update sets, and an XML export. In all three cases, we're really dealing with an XML package. It's pretty easy, and since I'm pretty sure you've seen add to update sets before, I'm going to go through this very quickly. I, of course, am using the developer.servicenow.com site. I've asked for my instance, and so I'm going to jump straight over into that instance so that we can work. The first thing I want to remind everybody when using this instance, when dealing with local update sets, it really helps to see that that's there. The easiest way to do this is to go over into your personalization settings. You can click that little gear on the right hand side and come down to developer. When you come down to developer, at this point, I'm not going to work on applications or scopes. Right now, we can do that in other videos. I'm just going to work on show update set picker in the header. Now, at this point, we have the default update set. So a reminder, when you go to build a new update set, I go to local, and there's local update sets. Pretty easy. When it comes to adding a new, I always talk to students on my behalf. I talk about a naming convention. Typically, in an instructor's perspective, that's the name of the class, the name of the lab, and then what happens in the lab. In my case, I would probably do something like demo lab 1.1. The other thing I always tell students, it's kind of a given, is to make sure that they put in the accountable person's name or contact information. And that kind of is very important to me, because if there's any problem with the update set, then that's where I go to see it. All I have to do is that and click submit and make current. And then you'll notice the bar up here changes, and anything I change will get set to that. Now, most people have that question of, well, how do I know if it's in there? The quickest way to find out if something's in an update set is to go straight over to this little arrow here and see the thing that you just added. Many things like user records, locations, things that aren't really changing the way the system functionally behaves won't get saved. So for that, we have this very special and exciting tool. It is called Add to Update Sets. You can actually find Add to Update Sets by going over in the developer site, same place, to Share. If you go to Share, you will find, I'm already logged in, so of course you'd have to register and log in. But you would find one of the most downloaded is, of course, Add to Update Set utility. Now, what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to post this link right in the video so that you can figure it out and get it and download it. You'll notice that we're up to the most recent version. Ironically, this is an update set. So to use the Add to Update Set utility, you'll have to add the update set to your instance. Now, how it works. When I have a current update set like Demo Lab, if I go to bring in some record, so for instance, let's go to users. I just so happen to have a record in here called Doc Brown. Now, if I want to bring Doc Brown in the update set, all I have to do is use this utility, Add to Update Set. And that will put Doc Brown into my demo lab. Little note here, very important. When you bring the user, related records like the roles do not come across. Second little note, if you bring a user, sometimes we think that to bring the role, I would click on ITIL. But in fact, that's not the connection between the user and the role. That's actually the separate table, the ITIL role. If I wanted to bring in the relationship between the user, Doc Brown, and the role, ITIL, I would actually click this little I next to this. And then you'd see where it says Open New Record. You'll notice that this is a different table. This table, and I can check it simply by mousing over the user and choosing Show. This table is actually called Sys User Has Role. So if I want to bring that connection between Doc Brown and the fact that Doc Brown's an ITIL level user, I would choose Add to Update Set. So that's how I bring those non-functional records in. So there's two ways. We've talked about Add to Update Set, and we've talked about the Update Set utility. So that gets me an update set. What I haven't figured out yet, or told you about yet, is how do I get that update set out? Now, in some of the classes, what we often do is we just take one instance and pull into the other. But we really should probably close that update set off. So I'm going to use this little icon to take me straight to the update set table. The big difference here, you'll see at this point I can't export it. However, when I change the state to complete, then I can save, and as soon as I save it in the complete stat, the export to XML appears. When I do so, the system puts it straight down into the downloads file, either in Explorer if it's a Windows machine or Finder if it's a Mac. So it automatically puts it into that category. But you'll notice the name is actually a little weird. It's the sys-ID of the record for the update set. So that's the sys-ID for this record. What I often do in these circumstances is I copy the name, and you can do the same thing in Windows. You can go to Open in Explorer, I believe is what the option is there. And then I'll just paste that in, and that way I have some name that's out there. Now, I've done this demo once before, so you kind of get the gist. So we've talked about add to update set and update set utility and how to export your data. I'll talk about importing in another video. But there's one other thing that I want to point out to people. You're not limited to update sets. If you have a lot of users, for instance, that you want to bring across, and you don't want to have to go through dozens of these things, I'll do a search for all that end in A. One of the other choices that I have by right-clicking the column context is export to XML. And that will just as easily get large numbers of data records out of your system. Next, we'll talk about how to pick up these update sets and bring them into another system. For instructors where this is really going to come into play is doing your labs. If you have classes where you do labs that take a long time, oftentimes when the students are doing those labs, you don't really get to, because you get 5 steps in and a student has a question, and another 3 steps and a different question. And now what step were you on again in your demo? So either you demo and they all wait, which doesn't always make students super happy, or you export, or you do a few steps and then students start to ask you and then you kind of forget where you are. So my answer to this is to build update sets of the finished labs. And then the next time you teach the class, you can load them into your system and run them very quickly. That way you can go around and still help students, you can still demo, but you always know you have a finished version. And we're going to talk about that next.